All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jaylon Jones. I'm the leader and founder of the United Afro Student Organizations, or the UASO. And I'm here today with Scott Greenberg, a motivational speaker who's here to be interviewed. I'm very excited for this because it's the first time we interview someone that is outside of Da Vinci, someone that is not a teacher. This is definitely going to be a new experience. I'm very excited to have you on, Scott. Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here and so glad to be able to have this conversation with you.
I'm definitely excited. This is something I've been definitely looking forward to. And a lot of people who do know me know that I love motivation. And I do practice and preach a lot of motivation. I listen to it nearly every day, or at least I try to. So this should be a great conversation. Scott, I know when I look at motivational speakers, a lot of the times they always have this one pivotal moment that led them to want to become self-motivated, get into helping others, get into I guess the self-help type ideas and routines, the self-help books, the motivational speeches. I know I had my moment. I was tired of being complacent. I was tired of sitting still. I wanted to move forward in my life. What made you kind of want to become a motivational speaker? And what made you kind of get up and say, I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm tired of sitting here. What can I do to push my life forward?
Yeah, well, it's such an astute observation that you made that people get into motivational speaking, they have that pivotal moment. And for many people, it's I'm sick of, and then fill in the blank. For
Right.
other people, it's I went through something awful and it came out the other side, and I want to help people with that. For other people, it's just like, it's not necessarily something quite as defined, and it might just be my life is good and one day my life is great, wow, and I want to do something to help other people. So
Right.
in my particular case, it was an overcoming adversity story. Like you, I was exposed to a lot of motivational things when I was young, but I never really envisioned myself having a place in that. But I was 22 years old. I was a graduate film student at New York University, and I was diagnosed with cancer. I came home from a film shoot and I found a lump on my neck, and that's what got me to the doctor's office. They found a tumor in my chest the size of a softball, and further tests showed that I had Hodgkin's disease. So I had to drop out of film school and spend the next year in treatment, chemotherapy and radiation and surgery and having all my hair fall out, the whole thing. And I
Wow.
remember thinking, okay, if this takes my life, that's awful. But if it doesn't, there's an opportunity here for some life experience that will be good for me. Because, I was going to film school, and day one of screenwriting class, they used to teach us that, conflict is what drives stories. And you have to, your stories, write what you know. Well, I was the youngest person except in the graduate program. I had the least amount of life experience. And I remember thinking, gosh, I wish I could have something unusual or interesting to experience to inform my storytelling. So lesson number one, be careful what you wish for. I'm telling you, next time you blow out the birthday candles, be really, really careful. So I got a very unusual experience, but I remember thinking, okay, if I'm able to survive this thing, this might be a source of great wisdom. So as much as I had fear and all that stuff, I also had curiosity. And I believe that curiosity allowed me to see things and think things and remember things that would later inform my presentation. So there are many things building up to it, but that one experience really opened my eyes to it. And at the end of that treatment, a friend of mine was putting on his student leadership conference. He said, why don't you come to our banquet and give a talk about your experience and how it applies to leadership? And that latter part was important because a lot of people who have an overcoming adversity story just like to talk about themselves. I was challenged with talking about the audience and how what I learned related to them. And that was my focus. So that led to more invitations to speak, and people have been calling for more than 20 years. So that experience and the invitation to talk about it, those things combined to kick off my career.
Wow, that is definitely a story right there to get someone into motivation speaker. I know that for a fact. I know there's people like, I think you could say Eric Thomas, who's a very well-known motivational speaker, him getting kicked out of his house. I always see these motivational stories. I'm like, man, these people went through some tough times, and I mean, you're really no different. But as you see, a lot of these motivational speakers always come up on the top. They're always come out of that hard situation on the top, and you have as well. So that's very, very
Well,
impressive.
and I've had people come to me and say, hey, I really would love to be a motivational speaker, but I haven't had anything awful happen to me.
Right.
I think that people believe that you have to overcome adversity, that you have to survive something in order to be a speaker.
Right.
But there are plenty of people who they didn't have this one dramatic experience. They had one great accomplishment
Right.
or one great opportunity or some interesting story. For a lot of people, there's nothing extraordinary about their life, but they think extraordinary things. So if you've done something unbelievable, like you climbed Mount Everest, you won a Super Bowl ring, okay, people are interested in that. If you have, overcome a disease or, something like that, okay, people are interested in that. But maybe you've gone through nothing, but you're really smart, or you have some great ideas, or maybe you're really funny. There's something about you. There needs to be something. It doesn't have to be overcoming adversity, but it needs to be something that has this sort of larger than life kinds of thinking that can be helpful to others. That's really the key.
And so would you say that, so you said you don't need to go through adversity to really become a motivational speaker, to have something to bounce back on that got you in. Would you say that one thing that could get people and kind of lead their story is the fact that, well, no, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is, do you just need something that sets you apart from the rest of from the crowd, right? Do you just need something that's unique for you and about you that you can kind of bounce on and bounce off of?
Well, ultimately, we need to get people's attention. And so there needs to be a reason to make someone listen. And if someone comes to you, we all know what it's like to speak to someone who doesn't engage us, who is just kind of boring because they're not offering something new or interesting or refreshing. Being a motivational speaker, it's not just about having a great idea or great message. It's about the ability to connect with people and get them to listen.
Right.
And if you want to make a living at it, well, then you also have to find a way to stand out from a million other motivational speakers. What makes you different? What makes you unique? What's your story? And how is that different from other people? Or what's your message? And how is that different than others? Or what's your approach? And how is that different from others? But something has to stand out to make people interested in the first place.
Right, right. And we had previously talked on the phone about the lifestyle of a motivational speaker. Now, you kind of gave me an insight, but could you give people an insight of what it's like day to day to be a motivational speaker, the highs, the lows, the middle?
Yeah, and you and I had our conversation before the quarantine.
Right.
So my answer to the question was going to be slightly different than how it was prior. But I'm going to go have the benefit of the doubt. I'll be optimistic and assume that things will return to the way they were. I'll explain what the lifestyle pre-COVID-19 has been for a speaker, and I'll talk about what it's like now. Mm-hmm. So the highs are very obvious to people, that it's the ability to get up on stage and make a difference for people. It's the ability to be on stage, and if you enjoy entertaining, there's an opportunity to do that, to make them laugh, to make them cry, all the things that anybody who enjoys performing one way or another, those elements are there. There's an opportunity to learn about things that you're interested in and care about and get paid to share these things. There's an opportunity to travel. I have spoken all 50 states and throughout the world. Twice I was paid to speak on cruise ships in the Galapagos Islands. Really exciting, amazing things, and meet some great people. And it's not a bad job where at the end of a day's work, you get a standing ovation and a pretty good paycheck. Right. So those things are great. And people who are attracted to the idea of becoming a motivational speaker, that's what they're thinking about. That's what's happening on the surface. Here's the reality. For every time I get to speak on the Galapagos Islands, I'm speaking in, I don't want to mention a city because I don't want to insult anybody who might see this, but less interesting places. Right. Most of my time is not spent on stage. Most of my time is spent in airport terminals and on long flights and in stale hotel rooms or in rent-a-cars. I've missed some good friends' weddings. I've missed a lot of my kids' games. There are things I miss out on because the job has required me to be gone. It's also a job where, unfortunately, you can't just get up and speak and motivate. You have to sell that. And right. So there's a constant need to promote and sell oneself. And that can be very challenging during certain times. And so if they say, no, we don't want to hire you for you to speak, they're not just saying no to what you're selling. They're saying no to you. You take it personally. So from a business standpoint, it can be very challenging. And if you do a good job, you can get paid very well per speech. But you also have to book enough speeches to, in every given year, I don't necessarily know how many engagements I'm going to have. So it can be a bit of a roller coaster. As soon as COVID hit, the world of professional speakers was just absolutely annihilated. And that's true for a lot of industries, but we speakers traditionally make our living at live events and conferences. Well, guess what has happened to all those live meetings and conferences? They've all been canceled and postponed. So suddenly my livelihood has really taken a hit. So a lot of speakers, myself included, are now doing webinars and sort of paid presentations. There might be settings similar to this. I might be getting paid. It's a fraction of what it might be live. And it's a very different experience than, I do enjoy speaking to a live audience and having that energy and the kind of, the back and forth. That's not happening right now. So the question is the industry going to go back to where it was, where people be able to travel and have meetings and conferences and be there in the same room with the speaker, be there with the audience? We don't know how it's going to look. So in the meantime, I'm working on other things. I'm doing paid webinars. I'm doing one-on-one coaching with people. I have a book coming out this November that I'm very excited about. So I have a lot of reasons to be encouraged, but the life of a motivational speaker has changed. But there's a lot about it that's very challenging. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. And so I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it to really look not just into what's the glamour side of it, but the lifestyle, to make sure that it's something you want.
And so it seems like there's definitely a lot of risk in it. I think when I, maybe a couple other people kind of look at it, it's almost like looking at an entrepreneur. You see the money, you see the cars, you see the house, and you see the good of an entrepreneur, but you rarely see the work, the sacrifice, and the determination it takes to get to that goal. And it seems almost, if it's like that, there's a lot of risk in it, as well as, like you said, you don't know how many speaking engagements you're going to get a year. And it just so happens that 2020, you, of course, once again, you didn't know how many speaking engagements you were going to get, and then a virus hit. And so that really just was like a double negative, like boom, boom, and kind of pushed you back. So it seems as if there's a lot of risk in it. Over the years, have you been able to, kind of eliminate a little bit of that risk? Have you been able to, get more speaking engagements, have, kind of walk into a year a bit more confident, knowing that you could hopefully speak to a business or go to a conference and be able to, speak your motivation and hopefully, get money from that?
I've been very fortunate that my business has pretty consistently grown. I've had some years where it was a little bit of a dip, but overall, over the course of the 20-something years I've been doing this, I've been getting more engagements, bigger fees per engagement. Most importantly, I've been just getting better at what I'm doing. So for sure that's happened. And if you're really good and you know what you're doing and you know the industry that you're speaking in, you have more relationships and more exposure and more opportunities. And so that experience definitely has absolutely helped. But there's always going to be a certain amount of uncertainty when you work for yourself. And, there's one year where suddenly I had a nodule and I had to get throat surgery. I had to go 1 week without talking, letting alone, giving speeches. And so there's always going to be a certain amount of risk, but obviously the better you are, the more experienced you are at anything, the more you can start to mitigate some of that risk.
Wow. Well, that is, that would have threw me off. I'd have been like, oh my gosh. So just looking through your website, I was very surprised and very excited to know that you've talked to a lot of major businesses as well. You've talked to, I have a couple here. You talked to GNC, you talked to McDonald's, Jack in the Box. These are places that we eat at, places that we shop at. And there's so many other businesses that you talked to that I didn't add on here. What is that like? How is that?
When you get the phone call from one of those really big, well-known companies, at first it's an honor, it's exciting, and it's great. But once you get into it, when you're standing on stage, the people who are there, who work for McDonald's, right, who work for, Allstate, who work for, the U.S. Air Force, these are all groups I've talked to, they're no different than the people who work for that one company, that one group that you've never even heard of. It's right, just people. And the issues tend to be same, the needs tend to be the same, the challenges tend to be same. My job is to get to know the people in that organization, to go beyond the image, to get to know the people who are in the room and to know what's on their minds, what are their questions, and what do I know that can be helpful for them. But certainly from a business point of view, that when I can, add those to my client list and put it up my website, it does sort of, elevate me. And so I'm always grateful for those opportunities. And a lot of those have been really fun. But I've worked for other organizations that I had never even heard of, and it was absolutely a terrific experience. But I certainly enjoyed it, and it's nice getting to have, see the inside of those companies and to see what's really going on compared to just what the outside image is.
Have you ever gone to one of these bigger businesses and also gone to a smaller business and seen that they both have the same issues or having the same struggles? And did that kind of bring you to realize, like, these are all just people, the big company, the small company, everyone, every team is going to have its own issue?
100% of the time. There is no correlation between how well known they are and how functional they are. Right. So I have worked with big organizations who are unbelievable and who are high performance and have a great culture. And I've been to, given presentations for organizations that are just as well known, where it's like, I cannot believe they function because there's so much tension, because people hate each other. So their branding, their marketing, their fame has nothing to do with what's going on. But I will say that human beings are human beings. So insecurity exists to some degree in most human beings, and tension and weird social dynamics exist with every group of 2 or more people to some extent. So again, my job is not to have any preconceived notions when I get that phone call from the company. My job is to get to know the company, the people are there really well, and to identify what the issues are. Sometimes they know and they come to me. Sometimes I have to ask questions, do a little bit of digging. But people are people, and it has nothing to do with the companies they work for.
Wow, very well said. And this is a question I had wanted to ask you a while ago too. So I had known you spoke to these big businesses, and I'm like, I'm sure you've spoken to smaller businesses as well. One thing I know about me is I get nervous no matter who I'm talking to. Of course, if it's someone I don't know. So if I'm, meeting someone for the first time, whether I'm conducting an interview, whether I'm going on stage for one of the TED Talks I do at school, I get a little bit nervous. And as I go through, eventually I stop. I stop getting nervous, but it's more of the excitement that gets me nervous. Do you still get nervous, whether it's a small business or big business, after 20 plus years of doing motivational speaking?
Every single time.
Wow, okay.
I was nervous logging into Zoom right now a little bit to talk to you.
Wow.
Every single time. Now, here's the thing. My level of nervousness to give a speech is different than someone who has that fear, has never done it before. I've been doing it for a long time. So, and once I get going, all my preparation, all my experience, all the things I know, there's muscle memory there and it kicks in. And I'm able to focus on that. But before I go on stage, that's where I'm looking at the audience and I'm seeing all those strange faces and I'm wondering and I'm imagining all the terrible things that can go wrong. And maybe the microphone dropped out for a second and I'm worried about that. So what I tell people is I'm never nervous on stage. I'm nervous on the stairs as they're reading my introduction, as I'm preparing to go on. That's when my freak out starts. Once I get going, then it's great. And also all the things that we're usually afraid of have happened to me on stage. I've lived through them. I've had power outages where the lights go out, where the microphone breaks. I've had people pass out and have seizures. I have had one outdoor audience where people didn't realize it, but they were sitting on these logs and there was a beehive and the bees attacked the audience.
Wow.
And I mean, I can go on and on with all kinds of crazy stories of things that I've lived through as a speaker. And I've had hecklers and drunk people and people shouting things out, and I got through it. So, again, the experience kicks in once you've gotten through those things a few times. But again, what actually happens is never as bad as what you can imagine and what you predict. But that's a long way of saying, dude, every presentation I get nervous, and that's just part of the job. It means that I care. And like you, that energy translates into flow.
Right. And kind of another question on the same topic. I know me personally, I tend to write out motivational speeches, but I've never actually gone based off the script. I don't think there's ever been a time within my short lifespan that I go based strictly off the same words I wrote. I always add more, or I always take some parts out while I'm thinking, I'm like, this may not be good for this exact moment. The audience may not be reacting the way I want them to, or they're reacting this way, so I won't say this. Do you write out motivational speeches, your speeches that you're going to get to these big businesses? And do you always go based off the script, or do you sometimes add in or take some things out while you're just talking and flowing?
I never have a script. Wow. I always have an outline. Mm-hmm. And it's very common that once I'm up there, then I'll deviate from the outline based off of what's happening in the room. The more you prepare, the easier it is to then go away from your preparation and come back to it, because something happens in the room or you get an idea. Again, preparation allows you to, improvise a bit, which is great. But what I do find is if I'm generating new material, I tend to over-talk it. I tend to say too much, too many words, and I tend to go on. So what I find is that if I'm working through new material, I might say it out loud by myself 20 or 30 times. And sometimes that one section, I might type it out just to kind of get it out so I can kind of organize it a little bit. And then I don't sit there and then memorize it, but the process of writing it then cleans it up in my head. Then I return to saying it out loud. And after a while, I said enough times that it starts to then get a little bit, it starts to repeat itself, which is what you want. You want to really know it. But I've never since I was in 5th grade, where I wrote a speech to run for student council. I've never written a speech and memorized it, because if I did, I'd be too stressed out about getting the words right. And then I wouldn't be concentrating on the people. I'd be concentrating on the words. And I find the more I get out of my head, the more I focus on them, the better that I do.
And that is, I always notice that too. I'm like, why am I trying to write a script when I know I'm just going to go kind of off of an outline more than the script? So I think that's something I'll definitely reconsider, because now that I think about it, that's really what I do. I just come with an outline and I'm like, okay, I should say this for this part of the speech, but I'll most likely add more to it. And I always have that in the back of my head. And anyone that knows me personally or has been watching my videos or things, I'll say, well, this is going to be a short video, or this won't be too long of a speech. And I always add more. I always keep going, because it's more of the excitement. Like, I'm just the type of person to get excited when talking to someone new, someone who gets excited when I'm able to add value to someone's life. So I always catch myself in that moment, always speaking.
The fear is always that you're not going to have enough to say.
Right.
The problem is we usually end up having too much to say.
Right.
Which honestly is worse. I think it's very rare that an audience is going to say, like, that was it. We get to go on our break early. Like, no one's ever complained about that. Right. But speakers who are running too long, or they take too much time making a point, they're the ones who lose the audience. And that's why it's important to prepare, not so you have enough to say, but so you don't take too much time or use too many words to deliver your message.
And it's kind of like finding that Goldilocks, right? Like, how long, it's like, if I want to get this point across to a group of people, maybe 3 minutes is that Goldilocks, and maybe 5 minutes is just too much time. Right now, I'm starting to lose the audience attention. That energy is leaving. Maybe carrying it on for only a minute. Well, no one really got the point. You kind of heard it. It went through your brain and it left right out because it wasn't emphasized. So there's a whole other level here to remember as well, is that I think the best speakers are humble. The worst speakers have a big ego, and they think that they are the event. Right. I am never the event. It's not like people bought tickets to go to a theater to listen to Scott Greenberg. I speak and they leave. I'm always part of a larger conference, a larger meeting, a larger event. I might be the keynote speaker. I might have a big role, but there are many other things happening. For the person who's hired me, for the person who's planning the meeting, they're worried about a lot of things. My keynote might be one of them, but they're worried about everything. Well, if I go on for 15 minutes too long, that might mess up the catering staff who has been hired for a certain designated period of time to get a meal served. I might be cutting the time of the speakers who come after me, either on the main stage or in breakout sessions. There might even be a speaker who's supposed to be in that room setting up. So one of the most unprofessional things that a professional speaker can do is run longer. So for example, I might be hired to give a keynote from 4 to 5 o'clock p.m. If I go to 5:15, I might be messing up dinner. It's causing a lot of stress for people. The other thing is that, they want you to be professional. So what I found is if I'm scheduled to go from 4 to 5 o'clock and they're running 15 minutes late, very often they'll say, well, go ahead and run, go to 5:15. I don't do that. I still stop at 5 o'clock, because then not only have I hopefully given a good speech, but now I've saved their agenda. I've saved their schedule, which means so much to the people who are hiring me and everyone else who's part of the meeting, which means I have to be prepared without any advance notice to give a 60-minute speech in 45 minutes. I have to know in real time where I can cut short, how I can edit, what I can leave out, when I can speed up in order to end when I'm supposed to. So there's a lot more going on than just, are you going to lose the audience? The question is, are you going to ruin their conference or create great inconvenience by running too long? And at that point, I feel like it's more than just an event. It's more than just you're here to, give a motivational speech. You're here to just be a great person, add value, and hopefully save someone's, conference a couple minutes and try and keep them on time.
If you know that, you will book so many more jobs. People will appreciate you. It's not enough to give a great speech. Your job is to make the meeting planner's life easier by responding to emails, by sticking to the topic, by not saying anything inappropriate, certainly sticking to the schedule. Your job is to make their life easy and not be a diva, not be too dramatic. I once spoke at one of the largest conferences I ever spoke at. My audience was 17,000 people. Wow. One of the other keynote speakers was a former NFL player, extremely famous. So he's doing his thing. He started on time. They gave him plenty of time. And as it was approaching the end, they gave him the red light that only he could see, which implies finish up. And he says, you know, they're giving me a red light, but I don't care. I'm going to keep going because I got things I want to say to you. And the audience, they were polite and they kind of cheered. And he took an extra 20 minutes because, hey, this is going well. Why should I stop? Well, maybe it was going well. But think about the unfairness to everything that's on the agenda, including other speakers, the caterers, everyone who's involved. It wasn't very professional. His job is to kick butt and deliver a message within that set period of time. That's part of the job. And so it made a lot of people upset. Even if the audience is happy, it inconvenienced so many other people.
Right. And would you say it's kind of like when you're operating in that zone? Because I know me, I kind of get an adrenaline rush. Almost with anything, you kind of get an adrenaline rush when you're doing something, playing a sport. Maybe you're working out. You kind of get that rush when you're flowing, you're going. Is it kind of like that rush that he maybe got that made him want to continue on, and because of that, he kind of maybe messed up the event, took away from your time and anyone after you?
I think he was enjoying it, and he might have been in the zone, but that doesn't matter. You signed a contract. You're going to speak from this time to this time. It's part of being a professional. So my job, if I'm really in the zone, I'm absolutely, 80% focused on what I'm saying, and I'm 20% focused on everything else, such as the schedule. So we got to pay attention to that. So I try not to let people see me look at my watch, but what I'll do is on my phone, I'll set up a big clock and I'll put it somewhere discreet where I can just kind of ever so slightly look off camera to watch the time. And very often there's a clock behind the audience, but I'll plant something there as a reminder so that I know what's going on. Now, very often there'll be a clock that's planted by the AV staff that's counting down that tells you how much time you have. A real professional honors that, even when they're given less time. And I will tell you, probably 90% of the time, I end up with less time than I'm promised. So if a client says, we want you to come in for a 60-minute speech, I plan on about 40 to 45 minutes. And 90% of the time, that's how it works out. Even when they say, don't worry, we should really stick to our schedule, they don't. And no one ever complains that you finish early. So part of the job is being professional, knowing there's more going on than just your speech.
No, and that is definitely something to take forward, because I feel like professionalism is something that in any area, any job, any career, you have to bring as a human being, more of less that you're trying to play a character and just, be a good employee for your boss. It's more of a characteristic that you carry throughout your whole entire life. So I definitely value that. And I hope a lot of people can value that.
A larger thing.
What happened?
I was going to say, it speaks to a larger thing that you can't make it about you, that you, even though for that period of time, all eyes and ears are focused on you, it's not about you. It's about them. And it's also about their event. And if you think it's like, well, hey, I'm really connecting with the audience. This is beautiful. Why should I cut this off? Well, you should cut it off because there's a lot of other people want to make a difference, including the catering staff and the other speakers and everything else that's happening. So you got to take yourself out of the equation. And there's just no room for ego. Plenty of speakers have it, and it doesn't serve them.
Right.
Certainly doesn't serve the audience.
Not to keep you too long, Scott. One of our last questions, a question I ask quite often to the people I interview is, you've been working in motivational speaking, you've spoken to these big businesses, you have a book coming out, you've been through the highs, the lows, and the middle of being a motivational speaker. Throughout your lifetime, throughout your career, what is the biggest or biggest lessons you learned from being a motivational speaker, and also your time just living on earth and experiencing new things, new challenges, and new growths?
Such a great question. A lot of it has to do with what I just said, that the more we can remove ourselves from whatever it is we're doing and just give and serve and put out value into the world, whether it's through our work, whether it's through a presentation, whether it's through a food or for a, whatever it is, just give and love and serve and be of use to other people. If you are, they'll always have use for you. You'll always have a business. You'll always have an income. You'll always have a job. But you can't make it about you. We're not here to impress people. We're here to serve people. We're not here to prove ourselves. We're here to improve ourselves. And so I think we need to get rid of ego, get rid of insecurity, stop thinking about you, just focus on other people and making their lives better. I think we need to be bold, that every day we need to constantly do things that take our breath away, where we think there's no chance I'm going to succeed at that. That's the kind of stuff that we have to do, that we have to go after the biggest game in our hunts. We have to shoot for the highest stars. We're not always going to get them, but we need to think big, because, you know, that's not even optimism. It's just closer to the truth. And so I think we need to also keep a clear head and make sure we're not letting any of that mental stuff get to us. But mostly, if you just don't even worry about yourself, just focus on being of service to others, being of value to others. That's the best way to grow yourself, whether you want to serve the world or whether you even want to serve yourself. The best way to serve yourself, you want to make money, make a difference for other people.
And not even kidding you, an interview ago, I had on one of my former teachers, Mr. Jackson, and he said the exact same thing when I asked him that same question. He said, serve, just serve. He was telling me, Jaylon, and anyone who's watching this, simply serve. And, you know, like you said, you can make money while serving. It's doable, right? You can make a living, make sure, keep your family safe, keep you safe, make sure you're good, and also serve while doing so. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And he put it, what he said was, an apple tree doesn't eat its own fruit. You know, it doesn't eat its own fruit. Other people come to the apple tree. Other people reach on that tree and they grab that apple. Hopefully when they eat that apple, they'll plant another seed. And that's them giving back. They took and they gave. And so that's well said. That's beautiful. And I feel like that's going to be something reoccurring on this channel, where people say just serve, because that is something that I'm trying to do right now, and that I've been actively doing, trying to make sure that it's not about get, you know, how much can I get? How much can I get? How much can I give is now the question. How much can I give here? How much can I give there? And finding that balance, and, you know, not destroying my life because I'm constantly sacrificing and trying to give, but finding a balance between, you know, getting and giving. And you said it beautifully. I'm glad that both of you said that, because it's very important. And I hope a lot of people can pick up on it. Thank you, Scott. This was a great interview.